Hello there, my name is PolishLynx, welcome to Moonlight Walks. I said I will not play it again. Well, I changed my mind. Let's do two other endings, which you haven't seen. Okay, it was the summer before I started college. I had spent the past 2 years studying, taking tests and applying for admission. Now, for the first time in a while, I had a little downtime, so I decided to take the opportunity to explore America. But since I was broke, my plans were quickly scaled down to spending the summer at my aunt and uncle's house on a small island known as North Sand Island. North Sand Island was Barrier Island in the Atlantic Ocean. It was remote enough that there wasn't even a bridge to it, just a ferry that ran a few times a day. Being such a small island, there wasn't all that much to do, but the solitude was nice, and I found ways to pass the time. One thing I did was to take pictures with my digital camera. On the night of the full moon, I decided that I wanted to capture the moonrise. So I went out to the beach just before the moon came up, set up my camera on a tripod, and locked in the appropriate shutter speed and f-stop. Every few seconds as the moon rose, I used the remote that came with my camera to snap another frame showing the moon and its reflection in the water. It only took a few minutes for the moon to rise over the horizon, but I kept at it for a while longer. Finally, I was done. I started packing up my camera and my tripod to get ready to head back to my aunt and uncle's house. That's when I first saw her. In the distance, I could see someone else walking down the beach. I could tell that it was probably a girl or a woman from the long white dress she wore, but from that distance it was hard to tell anything else about her. I decided to stay a bit to see who it was. In all the times I've gone out stargazing, I'd never met anyone just walking down the beach in the middle of the night. At that late hour, most people were either at home or in a town with other people. You hardly ever saw people by themselves. The only time I've seen someone else on the beach at night would be when they are watching the stars or the satellites go by. But those people stay still and look up at the sky, while the girl was looking down at the ground in front of her, watching where she was going. I ran through a number of crazy scenarios in my head. Maybe she had some disease that meant she couldn't be out in the sun. Maybe she was looking for buried treasure. It only took me a few seconds to dismiss this. What was the chance of them actually happening? I waited for a while as she slowly made her way down the beach. I didn't think such a slow walk would be for exercise, but I had no idea what else she could be doing out there. Finally, she was close enough that I could get a good look at her, using the telephoto lens on my camera. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. She was around my age, a year or two younger, or older at the most, and in perfect shape. Her skin was flawless, if a bit pale, and her hair was very light, almost as white as the long dress she was wearing. Together, the combination of pale skin, light hair, and a white dress made her seem to glow in the moonlight. She was a fair ways off, and I was pretty sure that she hadn't seen me. I knew what it was I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I have to go with. I knew that I wanted to take a picture. I thought I would be a failure as a photographer if I let such a beautiful sight go without capturing it, so I readied my camera to take her picture. I didn't let her know I was there. It's best to take pictures of unaware people, because if they know you are taking their picture, they tend to pose unnaturally. I set the camera to auto, framed her in the picture, and pressed the shutter release button. The camera beeped softly as it captured the picture. I repeated this a dozen times. I found that it helps to take many pictures in the hopes that one or two of them will come out perfectly. When I was done taking the pictures, I lowered my camera and waved to her. After a few seconds, she finally noticed me and waved back. But she was still far enough away that if I had tried talking to her, my voice would have been lost over the crash of the waves. I put my camera back into its case, picked up the tripod, and started heading back to my aunt and uncle's house. Why not heading to her? When I got back, I hooked the camera up to my computer and started downloading the pictures I took that night. The series of photographs of the moon came out well, but they weren't really what I was interested in. I quickly skipped through them, looking for the pictures I took of the girl. But when I finally got to the pictures I took of her, there was something strange about them. She wasn't there. I am almost certain that I had framed this picture right, but all I saw in them was the sandy beach behind where she was standing. There were a dozen pictures like this. Each of them had the background of the shot I had framed, but the subject was nowhere to be seen. I must have spent an hour slowly cycling through the pictures I took of the girl, hoping in vain that she would show up in at least one of them. But she was never there. The combination of her mysterious beauty and the strangeness of those pictures imprinted her image on my mind. Even today, years later, I could close my eyes, think back and see her as I saw her through my lens that day. I went stargazing that beach several times over the summer, hoping that I would be able to see her again. But I never did. And that's one of the endings. Which, well, wasn't too great. Should I go with that immediately? Yeah, let's go. Why not? So, after it is the same episode, let's skip the text and we'll go from the choice. Oh, do. Go back, go. Okay. Here. I know that I needed to talk to her. As the girl was walking this way, I decided the best thing to do was to put my camera away and wait for her to come closer. I didn't want to scare her away by running towards her, or to have to shout out over the ocean waves. After I had patiently waited for what I must have been 20 minutes, she was finally close enough that I could talk to her in a reasonable voice. Hello. Maybe it wasn't the most eloquent of lines, but it was all I could think of at the time, and it got the job done. She stopped and looked at me, as if waiting for me to say something else. It's a nice night. It's warm, but not really all that hot. She nodded at this, but didn't say anything. I finally decided to cut to the case and ask her the question on my mind. So, what are you doing out here? Walking. Just walking? In the middle of the night? Yeah. Are you going anywhere in particular? I walk around the island, following the beaches. The island wasn't that big. I could go around it in a few hours, maybe a little more if I stopped for a break. I'd have no problems keeping up with her. Mind if I walk with you? If that's what you want. I decided that I'd bring my camera with me, but I hid my tripod and back in the dunes. This took only a few seconds and we quickly started walking down the beach. We walked in silence for a while, until we could no longer see where we started. I looked back anyway and saw only our footprints breaking up the sand of the beach. Walking was great, but I needed to try talking to this girl. I decided to see if I could find out why she was out at night. So, she stopped and looked at me. Is there a reason why we are walking down the beach at night? It's something to do. I see. Do you do this often? It seems like I do this every day. Do you always walk alone, or do other people come with you? Usually I walk by myself, but once in a while I meet someone else and sometimes they decide to walk with me. It's only happened a few times before, and I don't think that anyone has asked as many questions as you. I didn't know how to take this, and we stood in silence for a second. Finally, she let out a small laugh, smiled and took the initiative. What were you doing out there? I didn't think that she was interested in me, and so it took me a second to respond to her question. Seeing my hesitation, she elaborated. I think we both agree that it's rare to meet someone else out on the beach this time of night. So, what were you doing here? There. It took me another second to think back to what I was doing, but finally I answered her. I'm into astronomy. Well, stargazing, really. I was out taking digital photos of the moon as it rose. She looked at me questioningly, as she didn't know what I was talking about. I found it a little odd, as I thought everyone knew what a digital camera was. Show her the moon. I was really into astronomy when I was young. I could look up at the moon and name all of the seas. Really? Well, I can't do it anymore, but I still remember one of the seas is. I pointed up to the moon, and she turns to take a look at it. Take a look at the right side of the moon. If you look, you can see what looks like a boy, with a head, body, and 2 legs. Do you see it? I see it! She seemed excited by this, as if she had never looked at the moon like this before. Maybe she hadn't. People look at the moon in different ways. Some people see a man, others a boy and a girl, others a rabbit. Well, if you look at his body, that's the Sea of Tranquility, where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked. Buzz? Like the sound? Well, his real name was Edwin, but everyone called him Buzz. I don't know why. She didn't say anything for a few seconds as she took this in. So there are people walking around on the moon? Not anymore. We sent the last people in the 70s, and nobody has been back there since. So we sent them? Yeah, every man on the moon was an American. She smiled at this, as if she had just found out and taken great satisfaction in this fact. I thought it was odd, thought that she hadn't heard of the moon landings. I had thought everyone learned about them when they were young. Still, it gave me a sense of satisfaction to be a person that told her about them. I decided that I would change the topic to something I was sure that she could talk about. Did you grow up around here? I did. When I was growing up, there weren't all these houses and buildings on the island. The only things on the island were farms, and the farms were huge. Only 4 families lived here, and between us we owned all the land on the island. My family was one of the 4. We owned the southern end of the island where we first met. We hadn't cleared all of our land, but we had a large enough farm that we could grow the food we needed and sell some at the market. I know that the island's population was so small so recently. I knew that tourists could grow a population, but so quickly? Did you go to school on the mainland then? Once in a while, when we took a ferry over to sell our produce, we would spend a few days in a school being tested. But mostly of the time we were homeschooled. Mama would teach us reading and writing, and Papa would teach us math and things. At least, before they died. With this, her smile went away. It was obvious that this was a hard subject for her to talk about. I dropped the subject. It looked like if I asked her to continue she would break out into tears, so I decided to let it go and instead just start walking down the beach again. I don't know how much time passed until we spoke again. Maybe it was an hour, maybe less, maybe longer. We slowly made our way around the island, with me walking a few feet behind her. If it had been someone else, I probably would have taken my leave and headed back home. But there was something about this girl that made me want to stay with her. An aura of some sort, of beauty, of tragedy, of loneliness, perhaps some combination of all of them and more. And so we kept silently walking down the moonlit beach. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and I tried once again to strike up a conversation. So, is there anything you want to do with your life? For a few seconds she said nothing, as if I had said something wrong. But then she began to speak. Once I thought I knew. When I was younger, it was like my life was planned out for me already. I would follow in my mother's footsteps. I'd help out on the farm for a few years. Even when we were young, we had chores. But when we finished our schooling, we could help out even more. Eventually, I'd meet a nice boy, and I didn't know who at the time. Think back, probably would have been one of the Miller boys. They were around my age. We would get married and start a farm of our own. We'd raise a family together. A few girls, and I always wanted a boy, because all I had was sisters. Now, however... Her smile vanished as she let the thought trail off. After a little while, she changed the subject back to me. What about you? What do you plan to do in the future? Her question took me a little off guard, both because I wasn't expecting her to ask me the same thing and because I'd never really thought much about my future. She smiled a little at my obvious confusion. Well, I'm spending the summer visiting with my family. When it's over, I'll be going off to school. Aren't you a little odd to still be in school? Well, state school. I'm going to be attending a university in the fall. I don't know what I'll do after that. I don't even know what classes I'll be taking, or exactly what my major will be. I figured that when I'm not at school, I'll be living with my parents for a while. Eventually I will get a job and move out. As to settling down and starting family, well, I have no idea about when it's going to happen. I haven't really thought much about it yet. I don't think many people have their lives as well planned as you. I think most people are just sort of winging it. At this, she let out a quiet laugh. Is there something wrong with that? No, nothing at all. In fact, I think I envy you. Why? Well, you can do anything you want with your life. You can go anywhere you want. Some people would think that having too many choices is some sort of curse or a burden. But I think it's just freedom, and that's a good thing. I think it's nice to live a life where your future is open, where you can do anything you want. Once again, I didn't know what to say, and for a second I thought we'd go back to walking in silence. But instead of letting the conversation falter, she kept it going. What do you do for fun? Lots of things, like drawing, listening to music, watching cartoons, football on TV. Football? She repeated the term slowly, as if she knew both words, but had never heard them together in that way before. Yeah, football. You know the sport, you've heard of it, right? She shook her head to indicate that she hadn't. How can I begin to describe it? There are 2 teams on the field at once, and one of them has the ball. The center hikes the ball to the quarterback. The quarterback can either throw the ball to another player, hand it to another guy, or try to run with it. Everything I said seemed to confuse her even more, but I didn't know what else to do, so I just kept on going. The other team tries to stop them by tackling the player with the ball. If they can't move the ball 10 yards into 4 downs, then the other team gets it. It was around this part of my explanation that she broke out giggling. Now that I look back on it, my explanation was sort of absurd. And so we passed the night talking about things. Mostly I talked and she listened. Sometimes she would ask me questions and I would answer them as best as I could. Many times that wouldn't be good enough, and she would break out laughing because I fumbled through another explanation. We spent the rest of the night like this, talking and laughing as we made our way around the island. By dawn we had made it almost all the way around the island. To a cliff not far from where we had first met. The girl started to climb back down to the beach below, but I stopped her. I thought we could stay here and watch the sun come up. To my surprise, her reaction to my explanation was one of shock. It's a sunrise already, I have to be going. This came as a surprise to me. We had been getting along well, and now she was about to run off. She must have seen the disappointment on my face as she changed her tone as she elaborated. It's not you, it's just that, I can't. I understand. I said, not really understanding anything. As she started walking away, I searched my mind to see if there was anything I could say to keep her there just a little longer. Suddenly I realized that there was something I had forgotten to ask her. What is your name? I realized that throughout the entire night I had never asked her what her name was. A bad habit of mine is that I can have whole conversations without knowing someone's name. So I asked her, almost shouting the question to her. She stopped walking, turned back to me and smiled. It's Mary. Mary Harper. At the moment the sun cleared the horizon. Its brilliance blinded me and I reflexively closed my eyes. I've seen the sunrise many times before and since, but I've never seen it as bright as it was that time. When I opened my eyes again, the girl was gone. I didn't know why she went, how she had left so quickly, or where she had gotten off to. The one thing I did know was that I wanted to meet her again. Having found out her name, I proceeded to look her up on the web. Of course the name Mary Harper gave me thousands of hits, but after I narrowed it down to the local area, I got nothing at all. According to the online phone book, no one named Harper lived on the island. After getting some sleep, I went out to the library to try to find out more about her. Knowing she said that she was from around here, I took out a book on the history of North Sand Island. The only thing I found when I looked at Harper in the book was the story of a Harper family that lived on the island in the 1780s. They were wiped out by an epidemic that killed almost everyone on the island in 1790. Only a few boys escaped to tell the tale. It left the island empty, and it wasn't until after the Civil War that people settled here again. I looked through the book and through the records of people living on the island after it was resettled. Despite hours of searching, I couldn't find anyone named Harper. That night I went out to the beach where I first saw her, hoping to meet her again. I spent the entire night there, but she didn't show up. I tried again the next night and the night after that, every night for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, 2 weeks is not enough. You need 2 more weeks to do that. But after the first night, I never saw her again. And I never forgot her either. If you went there for 2 more weeks, so 4 as a sum, then you would meet her again. Alright, that would be it of Moonlight Walks. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next game. Bye.